So my partner and I were on our way home from work, and at one light, we end up in front of a sporty red car. It's a red light, so no big deal. We're not budging when we suddenly hear a long, drawn out honk. My partner is keeping his eye on the road and trying to ignore the honking, but it's obviously annoying the crap out of him. I turned to see WTF was going on, and turns out, it was just the driver behind us, honking their horn, and being an impatient ass. Dude just keeps honking his horn through the entire time the light is red. It turns green, and side note, it's a specific light notorious locally for being short on green, and staying on red for upwards of 5 minutes. So we're trying to get by before it turns red, and the guy behind us just goes ham on honking his horn. My partner has had enough, and by the time we get up to the intersection, the light is yellow. My partner starts brake checking the guy, timing it so the sporty car guy would be stuck at the light, and we're already across the intersection. Honk at people incessantly, get stuck at the light, jerk. I'm the kind of person who would actively try to avoid conversations with strangers in public, so when I was in the subway a guy came up and sat next to me. Usually, I don't mind people sitting next to me, but the whole train was empty, and that he cold just sat one seat away, and I probably wouldn't even notice as I'm currently half asleep while waiting to arrive at my station. Once he sat next to me, I immediately woke up as I felt someone's body brushing against my shoulder. I didn't mind of course and just continued to mind my own business. He later went on to slowly nudge me out of my seat, which irritated me as he cold just moved a seat away if he wanted more space, and I was literally sitting at the corner with nowhere else to go. I was slightly pissed and told him to move a little back to his own seat. But about 2 minutes later, I was facing the same problem again. So I said F it and went to sleep and had to lean against him as I had limited space to myself. I could tell he was pissed initially, but oh well, I had already told him off, and he didn't really care about it. Sorry if this isn't some dramatic revenge, just some small minor one that felt kinda good. Close bracket. I don't know if this counts as revenge, but it felt like it to me. I have had symptoms that were really bad in high school. So much so that in 10th grade, I had a 1.57 GPA and the mathematical comprehension of an 8th grader. I also had a really crappy family life. My dad would take me aside to give me painfully long lectures about how I was useless, wouldn't graduate high school on time, if at all, and that college isn't in my future. He said it was important for him to emphasize that I was a waste of a school desk. There was nothing anyone could do for me. Then he forced me to drop out of high school when I was 16. A bunch of crap happened after that, including a residential treatment center. But after I was discharged, I was allowed to go back to school. For my junior year of HS, I was enrolled in a self-paced school program. I was also finally put on Vyvanse, and that was a total lifesaver. I made A's and B's after that. I brought my GPA up significantly. I wanted to say it was 3.0, but that seems unlikely. It was at least a 2.9, and I ended up graduating on time. Not only that, I was accepted to all 5 colleges I applied to, though I had to write a convincing essay for some of them. In 2013, I was a freshman at Texas State University. There was one thing left to do. I got a copy of my high school diploma in those fancy leather book thingies with fancy gold engraving. I'll see if I can find a picture of it. When I got it, I walked over to my dad. I held it out to him, looked him in the eyes, and said, "I want you to have this. You were the one person who always believed in me." The look on his face was effing priceless. So we have had the most gorgeous corgi puppy. He's sweet, outgoing, affectionate, and a really good boy. Unfortunately, he's a dog, which means he barks. We live in a pet-friendly apartment, and his mostly infrequent barks didn't bother anyone, and not a single person made a complaint, except for our upstairs neighbor. He made it his personal vendetta to kick out our dog, writing to the council to get us evicted if we didn't sell our puppy. We fought for our dog for 8 months, trying every training method we had to cut down on his barking, but in the end, our neighbor's constant attempts to evict us over our dog took such an emotional toll on us, we ended up rehoming our dog recently. Now for the revenge part. I hope after all the work he put in for some quiet he enjoys my sister's recorder and kazoo practice at 8 AM on weekends. Side note, she cannot play either of these instruments. And since we no longer have a dog, he can't prove the barks he's hearing are coming from our apartment, or from my laptop speaker, to be specific. Hope harassing our dog for half a year was worth it. So basically I was given my sister's old phone. It was an iPhone 6 and was in alright condition. My sister orders a lot of stuff, like I'm actually shocked with the amount of stuff she orders, but here's the problem. When I was given her old phone plus SIM, and she got a new one, she refused to switch any of the package notifications to her new phone, meaning I got flooded with all the alerts of her packages being delivered or dispatched, and there was no way of me being able to stop it, unless I got a new SIM. It took me over a year to get a new SIM, and as soon as I did, I got a new number and signed it up for as many newsletters I could find, like 20 plus newsletters. As a result she blocked me on pretty much everything, but I think either way it was a win-win. This happened about 12 years ago. I lived in an island town, 80k people, that, although it was in probably the top foodie area of the country, had few good restaurants. There was one German restaurant within walking distance of my house, so I would sometimes go with my wife and 2 little kids, and other friends and family members. This restaurant did sausages well, and had good draft beer, but all other dishes were inconsistent. It had all the moves of a good restaurant, but just couldn't deliver the food. Someone always came away disappointed with their meal, and the prices were fairly steep. The host or maitre of this restaurant was off-putting. He liked joking and flirting with the staff, but seemed to find customers, unless they were his favorites, annoying. Let's just say he was oddly smug, and never took effort to make people feel welcome, even though this was his sole job. Anyway, the last time I went there, we had mediocre meals. On the way out, the host just looked at us blankly, so I actually said goodbye first, just to get a response. He said goodbye back, as if he were doing me a favor. By the time we got home, I was pissed. I created a fake Yelp account with fake picture and wrote a hard-hitting review. I called out the host, asking why he was such a snob. Gratifyingly, someone commented on the restaurant the next day and said, the preceding review said everything I wanted to say. So I wasn't the only one. Anyway, maybe 6 months later I happened to be in local market when a softball team came in. And who should be there but the host? He seemed to be kind of looking at me, as if he wanted to say something, but didn't. Later I looked at my fake Yelp account. There was a months-old message from the owner saying, you should come back in for a free meal. We've changed the menu. And that host guy is gone. So, I'm not sure, but I may have accidentally got the host fired. A few months later I went back, and it seemed to me that the waitress, who had been there before, was giving me hard looks. Did the host and waitress work out the most likely suspects for the review? Never did find out. But justice was served. Currently writing this while gleefully watching Mrs. Fingers reflect on what just happened. I like Mrs. Fingers. I really like Mrs. Fingers a lot, and Mrs. Fingers likes me a lot as well. But as with any person, there are some sides that one likes a bit less. I dislike that Mrs. Fingers has a rather short temper. If something isn't cooperating completely, and everything else in her vicinity suffers from the small outbursts if that happens. Nothing violent though. She knows that, and works on it, but sometimes the bubbles still burst. Anyway, Mrs. Fingers was working on her road bike this morning, because it had developed a creaking sound over the past week, and it is suspected it came from the area around the saddle. So she began disassembling the entire saddle area to give it a good clean and replace the lubricarbon paste. So far so good, but I saw she was getting irritated by it for some reason. Then I heard her say to herself that I need a damned spirit level to get the saddle back at the correct angle, and my phone doesn't do the job with that stupid iOS 13. I was in the adjacent room doing some domestic stuff, but I quickly looked on my phone and saw the local hardware store, 3 streets from here, was open until 1300H. It was 1200H now. So I walked to her work stand and said, "Hey Mrs. Fingers, the local She then looked at me with a face wondering how I dared to disturb her during her vicious fight with the equipment, and quipped while sighing what? So a bit taken aback, I said, oh, never mind. You look kind of busy. I'll leave you to it. I'm going outside. I'll be back within the hour. Yeah, whatever. So I went outside, took my own bike and casually went to the local hardware store in order to get some screws and bolts I needed for another project, and then returned home by 12:40h. Mrs. Fingers by then was done assembling her bike, but the saddle isn't yet at the correct angle, just eyeballed into place. So I said nothing initially, made some coffee, took the newspaper. At 12:45h I said casually, so what I wanted to say earlier was that I found out that the local hardware store is open until 1 PM just this Sunday, and they have spirit levels there. The look on her face was, yeah, you can imagine what it was when she realized she could have fixed her saddle by now, have a spirit level in her possession, and didn't need to worry about her bike for the rest of the day. And 15 minutes is too short of a time to get there to quickly grab one. So now I'm just going to let her simmer in those thoughts for a couple of hours, and if she calms down enough in the course of this day, I'll hand her over the spirit level I bought because she looked like she could need one. Or I can wait a couple of days. Thank you for watching. Slap that like button and comment your opinion on these stories below. I'm waiting. Write that comment. Seriously. Have you written it yet? If you don't comment, you make a bunny cry somewhere. You're not that kind of person. I know. Anyways, peace out and catch you tomorrow.